Here's what happened when I made a court claim against my credit card provider for faulty goods. Now stick around because there's some really important advice here if you're making a big purchase, home improvements, holiday, car, anything like that. It's incredibly important to use one of these, a credit card, not a debit card, a credit card. I'll run you through why and I'll tell you what happened in my case against First Direct Bank, which is part of HSBC, of course. Now, the story begins when I had a window fitted to my house. I'm afraid to say I did go with the cheapest quote I could find. In hindsight, not a great thing to do, but if you remember that episode of Fawlty Towers, Mr. O'Reilly, the builder, it was that kind of scenario, yeah. But I thought, well, even though it's the cheapest, I'm still entitled under consumer law to expect a decent, basic standard of quality. And they were members of Fencer, I think it was called. I began to notice this window was an absolute disaster. There were big cracks forming around the edges and there was a gap in one of the opening panels where you could actually see daylight. And it seemed to be getting worse, like the whole thing was distorting and twisting out of shape. And then I looked at it a bit more closely and held one of those 90-degree set square things to the corner. It wasn't even 90 degrees, it was something like 92 degrees. I did get in contact with this window company, and to be fair, they did send someone out to come and have a look, and this guy came, and the first thing he said was, yeah, this is an absolute disaster, this window. The whole thing needs to go. I'll go back and tell my boss, and they'll be in touch, and yeah. So I thought, fine, okay. And, you know, a few weeks go by. And then one day I tried to get in contact with the window firm again, phoned them, and the line was dead. And then I looked on their website and gone. Like they just disappeared into thin air. It turned out that the company had actually gone into liquidation. They'd gone bust. And that is where the credit card comes into it. An incredibly important piece of legislation called Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act. Now we move on to chapter 2 of the story, First Direct Bank. Last December 2024, I decided, well, I'll contact First Direct and pursue a Section 75 claim against them, as I'm entitled to do. Looked on their website, how do I make a Section 75 claim? I couldn't see any information about it on there. So I logged on to the app and there's a kind of a chat to us feature, and I typed out the scenario. Yeah, I'd like to make a Section 75 claim. I just gave a basic bit of background info, and I realised it was an artificial intelligence chatbot that didn't have a clue what I was talking about and just sent me around in circles and said, look at the frequently asked questions on our website. Hopeless. So I phoned them up at their call centre at the number that's like 24 hours a day, and explained it to their advisor on the phone and said, how do I make a claim? And this person didn't know, they didn't have a clue what I was talking about when I mentioned Section 75. And I said, do you have a contact, an email contact that I can send all the evidence to? I can send photos, I can send the original contract, blah, blah, blah. And they just faffed around and put me on hold, and they said, well, no, we don't really. And I said, do you have anyone dedicated? Do you have a department that deals with this? No, I deal with all the customer issues, whatever. And so I tried again on their chat function, on their app, and said, can I please have a contact, a person, a human being that I can send all my evidence to, Again, I was fobbed off, phoned them again, and it just went on and on and on. Eventually, I did get someone on the phone who seemed to know what I was talking about, and they said, okay, get some quotes to have it replaced, which I did. So I had 2 different window double glazing companies come to my house and give quotes for a new window. And phoned up First Direct again. I said, I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. I've got the quotes. I'll just look on the system, and this person couldn't find any record of my previous conversation. I said, can I speak to someone who deals with these claims? They said there isn't anyone specifically that deals with them. I was starting to get a bit pissed off by now because they just weren't taking ownership of the problem. They didn't want to know. And then finally I did manage to get hold of some email address to submit claims to. And then I got an automated response from that email say, well, we don't know you're a genuine customer. You need a security code to enter into the email. And I didn't know anything about that. Nobody told me that. And it went on and on and on. And it made me think, when banks want money from you, it's a different story altogether, isn't it? I mean, this is a credit provider. Now, I have been with First Direct for 27 years, and I thought I'd had a pretty good relationship with them, and they've certainly made a lot of money out of me over the years. And now when the shoe is on the other foot, they just don't want to know. They don't want to know. And this dragged on for a few months, and I could not get any human being at First Direct to actually take ownership of this. So I thought, well, enough is enough. You know, I'm gonna have to ramp up the pressure on them. So I sent them an email giving them a deadline, and I said, I'm giving you 14 days now to settle or to negotiate with me. If I don't hear anything back from you, I will issue a court claim. And the 14 days passed and I didn't hear anything. So off we go. Money Claim Online. That's the court services online portal for issuing claims. Anyone can use it. You have to pay a fee, which I think was, yes, it was £80 fee to issue the claim, because the amount I was claiming was £1,250. So that came to £1,330 because the fee gets added on to the amount you're claiming. It's a very simple procedure when you use Money Claim Online. It's designed for everyday people to use it without a solicitor. You shouldn't be intimidated by it. And that day came, that deadline came after 14 days, and I issued a claim. And it was served on HSBC's head office in Birmingham. Well, that's the registered office of First Direct. First Direct is just a trading name. And there it is, there's the claim. What you can see there is actually the portion that I received through the post. The thing that they received in the post would have looked a bit different, but it would have given them full details on what to do and how to respond to it. I mean, they are a bank after all. They're not toddlers. You'd expect them to be pretty clued up on this kind of thing. And what happens then is the defendant, which is First Direct, they get 28 days to enter a defence. And I waited, and I kept checking online and refreshing the money claim thing and waiting to see if they contacted me. Nothing happened. The 28 days was up. Now, what you can do then, under the Civil Procedure Rules Part 12.3, is you can enter what's called a default judgment, which means you just win because they haven't filed a defence. You just kind of win automatically. So I thought, well, they're a bank. They should know how to handle this. And should I cut them any slack? Should I be lenient with them? Well, they're not very lenient with people like you and me, are they? When we fall behind on a mortgage or a loan or a credit card payment, they are like a pack of wolves when consumers make a late payment or fall into debt. So I thought, you know what? I've given them every chance here. Let's treat them like they would treat me if I owed them money. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So I hit that button on the money claim portal, which is enter judgment by default, which meant that was it. They owed me money. It was a court order, and they were sent a copy of that court order. There it is, through the post. And they were told to pay the money immediately. Immediately. Did they pay? Did I hear anything from them? No, I didn't. 14 days passed. And then I received a letter through the post, and it really surprised me. Now, this was a 3-page letter from a large law firm, a really, really big, powerful law firm actually, acting on behalf of HSBC. And it was oozing with arrogance and this feeling of superiority. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. They said they were making me a settlement offer, subject to me signing a form with conditions attached to it. Whoa, 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 whoa. A settlement offer. There's already been a judgment, okay? There's a county court judgment against them. You can't start tinkering with it. And it's no longer a live case. I mean, it's not a negotiable situation. You have been told to pay. You had a claim, you ignored it. You had a judgment, you ignored it, and now you think you can start tinkering with it. I don't think so. And incredibly, one of the terms in this letter they sent with a contract for me to sign was a non-disclosure agreement, also known as a gagging clause, which meant that, you know, I couldn't tell anyone about the case. I couldn't tell friends, family. I couldn't make this video now. They actually thought they could impose this on the settlement. Well, you can't do that, I'm afraid. You can't do it. There was even, incredibly, a threat that I might have to pay the bank's legal fees if I didn't play ball and if I didn't go along with this. Absolutely outrageous. For a start, you can't claim for the other side's legal fees in a case like this because it comes under what's called the small claims track of the county court, which this case did because of the amount of money involved. And secondly, the litigation's done. There's a judgment. You ignored the claim, you ignored the judgment, and now you've got the nerve to try and come back and attach your own terms to it? No. Now, the Solicitors Regulation Authority has a code of conduct, and that covers law firms, and they are not allowed to mislead or coerce or bully or intimidate litigants in person. That means people who don't have their own solicitor. Those are very strict rules set out by the SRA, and this law firm is clearly breaching them by sending this outrageous letter to me with all these demands in it. So I just emailed them back, very, very brief email to say, no, I don't even have to talk to you. There's a judgment in place. Your clients had the judgment. End of story. And I even said that, you know, it's been 21 days now since the judgment was made, telling them to pay immediately. I said, I'm quite within my rights now to enforce the matter, which means to go back on Money Claim Online and enter what's called a warrant of control. Sorry, I forgot what it was called there. And that basically means sending the bailiffs. Can you believe it? Sending the bailiffs to the head office of HSBC, this massive international bank because it's just ridden roughshod over the legal process and ignored all the correspondence from the court. Now, it's a few days later since I recorded that, and I have an update for you. The update is they still haven't paid. So what I've decided I'm going to do is send the bailiffs in to HSBC's UK registered office, which is Centenary Square, Birmingham, I think. Yeah, so I wonder if Channel 5 film crew will be there to do Can't Pay, We'll Take It Away. That would make a good episode, wouldn't it? You've got to remember, I've been chasing First Direct for 10 months. That's how long it's been since I first approached them. And where do you draw the line? They've ignored absolutely everything. So yeah, it's bailiff time. I am disgusted by First Direct's lack of customer care and their cavalier attitude towards the law and the court service. They're a licensed credit broker with the Financial Conduct Authority, and they have to do things properly. They have to uphold consumer rights, and they just haven't done that. I'm also shocked by the abusive behaviour of the arrogant thugs who they engaged as their legal representatives. So, yeah, all I can say is please hit the subscribe and I will let you know what happens, because I'm interested to know myself. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when the bailiffs turn up. Just to give you a bit more on Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act, if you want to use it yourself, it creates liability for the credit card company if there's an issue with the retailer. Not necessarily the retailer going bust, as was the case in my little issue. They could just be very difficult to deal with. You can go straight for your credit card provider legally, and you don't have to exhaust all options of pursuing it against the retailer first. The law says that the lender is jointly and severally liable, so you can go to them in the first instance if you wish. It applies to single purchases of between £100 and £30,000 paid on your credit card, but you don't have to put all of the payment on. So, for example, if you're buying a £10,000 used car, you could pay a £100 deposit on this and then pay the other £9,900 by cash or bank transfer, but the legal protection covers you for the whole amount. Now, the Blackbelt Barrister has done a good video on this. I'll put a link in the description. Now, he obviously covers the legal framework, the letter of the law, but what I've tried to do here is show you the reality of what happens when you try and put it into practice, and it can be problematic. And as I have found out, some of these banks just don't want to pay up. They don't want to pay up. They make it very hard for you. They obfuscate, they delay, they mess around, and they even ignore court documents. So I hope you found that interesting, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.